Hello, and welcome back to the third episode of the He's Going Back podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and today I'm going to take you back to October 11th, 2003, where a ALCS between the Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. The game was already pretty chippy. What really set everything off was I wouldn't even say the throw was really at him or in him. It was Roger Clemens threw an inside ball to Manny Ramirez, and all hell broke loose. Benches started to clear. Manny took it personally. Clemens didn't back down. Benches clear. Chaos on the field. All of a sudden, Don Zimmer falls to the ground by the hands of Pedro Martinez. This looks bad for everybody, but Don got up and was okay. What's interesting about that scene, and if you've seen the video, Don goes in trying to swing. This dude's in his 70s. He has no business trying to attack a peak athlete. Martinez in his prime. I mean, this is. It's very funny to watch the video since no one got seriously hurt, but I don't know what Don was thinking. So today, with that introduction, our person of interest is Don Zimmer. He is a very interesting character and was in baseball forever. There wasn't an era he wasn't involved in until his death. So he was born in January 17th, 1931 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He played 12 years in the major leagues, 7 with the Dodgers, 3 with Washington, 2 with the Cubs, 1 with the Reds, and 1 with the Mets. What's interesting about those teams, on some of them, the year he was with the Mets was the Mets' first year in the league. The years with the Dodgers, he was with the Dodgers teams when they won their first 2 World Series championships in 55 and in 59. He made 1 All-Star, so he was with Don Zimmer, he was not known for his playing ability or who he was as a player. He really came into his own as a manager and coach, making 1 All-Star appearance in 1961 with the Cubs at the age of 30. So, I mean, he wasn't setting the world on fire in his playing days. He had a 235 batting average and a 662 OPS, which is on base plus slugging. So in 1955 is the year he had his best OPS at a 731. In 1955, the average in MLB was 750. So that tells you what kind of player he was. He was not he wasn't one of the best of the time, that's for sure. He came into his own as a manager, I would say, winning the Manager of the Year in 1989 and leading the Cubs to a first place NL East champion. He is very interesting. In 1953, he spent 13 days in a coma after he was hit in the temple by a pitch. Very scary time for him. Never thought he would play again. And then just 3 years later, broke his cheekbone by a hit by a pitch. This one was really bad, and they thought he was going to lose his eye. And he never really saw correctly after this, causing him a lot of hardships at the plate. Another interesting thing about his playing days is in 1966, he played in Japan for the Toei Flyers, which is interesting. I don't think it was as common as it is now to hear about major leaguers going and playing in Japan. I think the travel was harder, and obviously the language barrier would have been way more amplified then than it is now. Something that was interesting is from 2004 to 2014, he was a senior advisor for the Tampa Bay Rays. Wasn't a head coach, but was in the locker room, helped out. And every year he showed up to camp, he got a higher number. So in 2014, his last year with the club, he wore 66, signifying 66 years in baseball, in a career in baseball, which is amazing. I mean, that's such a long time to be in the game. With that, the Tampa Bay's retired number 66 in 2015. I think that just shows how much he meant to them and to the game of baseball. And he was kind of behind the scenes guy then. And he obviously meant a lot to them. We'll talk about some of his Yankee years. He was the bench coach with Joe Torre from 1996 to 2003. He obviously was on those teams when they won the World Series and got to relish in those. In 1999, he had another scare with a ball. He took a line drive to the head. This led to a railing being installed in front of the dugouts in Yankee Stadium and becoming pretty widespread in MLB after that hit. Now he was a good sport about it. The next game he came out, he had a old war helmet with a Yankees logo and his name on the back. So he took it good. He had some run-ins with players as manager. He really despised Billy and couldn't stand him. Thought he was just a stoner loser kind of guy. But he was a great manager. He went 885 to 858 wins loss ratio. He he got his job done. He spent 13 years as a manager, 2 with the Padres from 72 to 73, 5 with the Red Sox from 76 to 80, 2.5 with the Rangers from 81 to 82. He kind of talked about this Rangers program and it's just they didn't the ownership and GM kind of didn't know what the team was and where they wanted to go. So it just didn't work out. 4 years with the Cubs from 88 to 91. And that's where he really came into his own and shined. He took a team that wasn't really that great and they were contenders again, which for a Cubs team, well, that's all Chicago could ask for at the time from the Cubs. In '89, he won Manager of the Year and led the Cubs to first place finish in the NL East. So, with another interesting thing with Don Zimmer being in those early Dodger years, they were still played in Brooklyn. He had the honor of playing with Jackie Robinson. He played shortstop, so he didn't really get to play because Pee Wee Reese was just the man. And Don Zimmer didn't do anything to beat him out. And you weren't going to beat a Hall of Famer in Pee Wee Reese. He was ejected 20 times as a manager. I kind of thought it was going to be more because he had a lot of bump ins with managers. But 20 was a very low number for the kind of character he was and the animation he would get into on the field. He died June 4th in 2014. He had a career WAR of 2.7. Now, if you don't know how WAR works, I'll go with Jose Ramirez. On average, has about a 6 WAR season. Every year puts up 6 WAR. Now, WAR is accumulative. So, the more games you play, the more plate appearances you have, normally the higher WAR you will have, the better your defensive stats are, all that. So to have a 2.7 career WAR out of 12 years is kind of embarrassing to say the least, but how can you bash a guy for having a 12-year career in the big leagues? I mean, that's hard enough to get there and to play that long. So a couple of guys that played with him on the 62 Mets, which was the first year of the New York Mets. There were some old timers on that team that he had history with in Gil Hodges, who he played with on the Dodgers, and won his 2 championships with Gil Hodges. So he had a really good relationship with Gil. He kind of said he learned a lot about how to manage and run a team. Gil was ahead of his time as a player and just learned a lot from him at a young age and loved playing with him and had good times. He was very into horse racing and betting on horses. Always knew where all the tracks were, even going back to his minor league days. Always kept track of where they were, who would go, the horses. Always had that booklet with him, which is interesting. I guess there wasn't that much entertainment back then. I mean, he didn't really want to go out. He drank, but not on the level of a lot of the players of the time. He just wanted to gamble and go watch horses, which got him into some trouble because he would take loans from other players and lose it, not have the money at the time. So he did gamble beyond his means a lot of the times and got into some trouble with that, but never anything too serious or stuff like that. He talks about a story that he got pulled over one late night and getting recognized by the cop. which is I don't know how I feel about that. I do think you should treat everyone the same as a police officer, and the law doesn't go, well, you play in the big leagues, you don't have to listen, or you don't have to do this or that. But we all know it happens and it goes on, so kind of what can you do about it? Don Zimmer spent a lot of time as a coach and kind of bounced around the league, being a third base coach, being a bench coach. He really got to experience tons of different areas in the world and different personalities. And I think he handled those the best. I mean, he being on those early Yankees teams to be a leader and someone that people would come to for advice at the end of his career, really. I mean, they won, he was with them when they won, I think, four championships, four World Series. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's amazing. And he was a big part of those teams. Torrey had to step down a few times, and Don would take over as manager and did his job. He knew how to do it. He managed him well. He talked about relationships with Derek Jeter and all those guys. I mean, that list is endless of those teams. So he was a big part of that. And Torrey has said that there was no one he would have rather had by his side. I mean, the knowledge that man must have had. I mean, he playing in the 50s, coaching in the 70s and 80s, playing in Japan, playing with historic teams. I mean, the Dodgers of this time were the best. Not the best because the Yankees were around, but they were number two in those 50s years. I mean, they battled the Yankees year after year in World Series and finally got it done in 55. And that was a big deal. That was the Dodgers' first World Series and brought them to the party. I mean, they were then taken as a serious, serious team. If you could take down the mighty Yankees. He was also with the Washington Senators. There wasn't much to note there. I think what stood out to me in his career was the historic teams he was a part of. I, I mean, he was everywhere. Dodgers, Cubs, Red Sox, Mets, Yankees. I mean, these teams are Mount Rushmore of legacy and history of baseball. And he had his hand in all of them, which is very cool. I mean, he managed 2 years in the Padres on the nothing team. I mean, they were an expansion team, and he got them going. He kind of got that ball rolling with with player development and stuff. Card that I had bought for Don Zimmer after reading his book Zim: A Baseball Life is a 1958 Topps PSA 4. Not the best condition, but it was affordable and I really loved that 58 design. It was very classy. A solid background with with just the player cut out in it. It was a very nice card. I really liked that 58 series. They were they were some cool looking cards. I think that'll about wrap it up for Don Zimmer. I hope you enjoyed. That's about all I have. Thank you.